This episode is brought to you by Midwest Night Watchers, found everywhere on your favorite podcast platforms.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Piercing the Veil.
Hey, happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Man, it's beautiful outside.
Yes, it is. No wind.
I think we had a great summer, and then we got a little cold spell come through. Now I think we're in our Indian summer, if you want to call it Indian summer. I remember as a kid, Dad used to call the little warm up before the cold weather got here was Indian summer.
Yep. And yeah, we just got a beautiful day today.
Got a little bit done outside and getting a little bit done inside, and
now we're taking a break.
Spring cleaning, but it's not. I guess it's fall cleaning. I don't know.
Let's see. Jojo said our clocks went back, and it's awesome. You changed time already in the UK?
Yeah, they changed before we do.
Okay, so they already changed. Now we're all going to be mixed up at times.
Yeah. So I see we have Val and Moon at Noon, and
Moon at Noon's passing out brownies.
Oh. So who else popped in? Anybody else?
Let's see.
Judy Wheeler was at the very, very
yeah.
I see we have eight so far show up. So if anybody wants to pop in chat, and there's Blazer.
Hey, what kind of brownies? Is there a different kind of brownies?
Well, I guess depends on what the ingredients are, I guess. So thank you all for coming. We'll just hang out just for a minute or two while the people are popping in. And we got a great guest tonight. We got Linda Eastburn, author, and we're going to be talking about her new book, or the one that's out right now, right?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Oh, okay. So that's our background that we had up there, and we'll let her tell you about her book, and then we'll get into the discussion with her and just have a good old time talking about cryptids, Bigfoots, UFOs, aliens, wherever it goes. We're game for it, as you all know. How our shows usually go, we kind of go down little rabbit holes here and there, and you never know if you're going to get back on subject or not. I see Roger Blair. Did you already say him? He popped in.
Yep. Hi, Roger. They're still talking about brownies.
Oh, man. Well, we'll let you guys talk about food while we bring up our guests and get going. And if you have any questions for Linda or us to discuss or talk about, please put them in all caps, and I'll try to bring them up on screen, and we'll see if Linda can answer them, or maybe me and Jane can answer them. You never know. So let's bring Linda up.
Yes.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Hey, hi.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you, because I know I kind of messed the schedule up a couple of times. The one time we had you scheduled, I got sick, really, really sick. It's like It was over a week, and I had to cancel shows, and I was going to try, but I thought, man, if I'm in the middle of an interview, then I got to leave. Then poor Jane would have to handle handle everything. It's easier with two of us, but and then our daughter is coming down from Canada with the new grandbaby. So we had to
Yes.
reschedule it again. Stupid me. I thought, okay, we're going to do Halloween shows and all this stuff. And it's like, Jane goes, that's the week she's coming down, right? It's like,
yeah. I looked on the calendar, and normally we do like a Tuesday. Well, he had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I went, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are the only 3 days that they're visiting. She's going to be busy with a wedding, and we got a grandbaby we've never seen. And so, yes, everything. Hope everybody can just lift them up in prayer tomorrow for the safe flight. They're landing in Chicago. Then they have to get a rent-a-car and then drive 3 hours down to the toll roads and all that fun stuff. So everyone pray that my daughter and my grandbaby and my son-in-law make it safely.
You need to ask them to look for a Moth Man at the airport, see if they see him.
Yeah.
But it is that time of year, when they say the veil thins. I mean, our show is called Piercing the Veil, where we try to look into the other side. But they're saying that the veil is thinning right around Halloween all the way through the holidays, through Christmas and New Year's. Is supposed to be the thinnest, or when weird stuff starts happening.
But I think the veil's been broke.
Yeah. It might not even be there anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
Might have to rename our show. So, Linda, why don't you tell everybody about yourself a little bit? Don't have to go too deep if you don't want, and talk about your Encounters book, the one that you just got out.
Yeah. Threshold Encounters was born because I began to notice a thread between the UFO research I started back in the early 90s, and then that was followed by paranormal research. And I got pretty in depth with that because I was a hypnotherapist, and I took people who felt like they had been abducted by aliens into deep regression to try to remember some of those incidences. So I was real familiar with UFO activity and did a lot of case studies, traveled with the country, even outside of the country, to do UFO research. So then about a year and a half ago, I did an interview with Scott Nelson on the Bigfoot Sierra Sounds. And that was Bigfoot the Language. That was my first introduction into anything Bigfoot related. So from there, it was like my channel, my Linda Eastburn YouTube channel just kind of took off. And 400 interviews later, I know a lot more about Bigfoot now than I did a year and a half ago. Let's put it like that.
Wow.
But I noticed a thread between these various encounters that people were having. With UFOs, with aliens, especially ghost activity, as well as Bigfoot encounters. And there was a thread that seemed to run through it. So thus the book was born, Threshold 2 Encounters. And I include my perception of kind of what draws them together, or why they be connected somewhat together. And also there's some other information of, other things that might be happening besides just a flesh and blood encounter. No one thinks they're encountering flesh and blood usually when they see a ghost. However, when people see ghosts, sometimes they cannot tell them from a person. I've heard of cases where, especially a child or something will have an interaction with a ghost, and they'll be talking to them, or even grown people, and find out later, oh, that person isn't real. That person is deceased. So sometimes they can take on some pretty physical characteristics. So sometimes it's difficult even to know with a ghost if you're dealing with a real flesh and blood being, or if you're dealing with something otherwise. So there's a little bit of that in the book. There's also a lot of just hardcore physical evidence, whether that be UFO craft or whether it be Bigfoot evidence. Or even like poltergeist type activity with ghosts, things like that. So that's what the book is about. And that I kind of describe my background as well. Since the early 90s, did UFO research right up to today with the Bigfoot research.
Okay, so this is your current book. I got confused. You were talking about a new book coming out next year.
Yeah,
That's where when Garo asked me that question, I got confused.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought you talked about a new book, so there is a current book. So that's where I got confused.
There's one that just came out, and I'm working on another one called Superpowered Insight, which is SPI, SPI, which is about being able to look into the future. And so that one's going to be an exciting book. And that's more my cup of tea, because I worked for years in the field of teaching people the skill and the art of intuition and psychic ability. So Not so much future. This is kind of new, but this is going to be eventually a course and things like that. So yeah, it's going to be fun. I've just had some remarkable experiences in envisioning the future, insights about things coming down the line, and some that have led me into really good investments. I'm also a real estate investor. I've done that since the 80s, so that's my
Wow.
bread and butter. So and a filmmaker, but I can't say there's been a lot of money in filmmaking, but it's been a really fun challenge for me. So
Wow.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people, either podcasters or just investigators, the conventions or whatever for their particular field, or sometimes it's all in one. They cover cryptid UFOs, the whole gambit. But seems like books, and now it's starting to get into films and documentaries. It seems like people are pushing that on TikTok or Instagram or even YouTube. They're starting to do little videos here and there, clips of experiences or reports that come in. It's kind of nice. I mean, that's how I found out about the Bigfoot and Moth Man in Illinois. It's on the Bigfoot was on the BFRO report site, but somebody actually did a little video on it. So it was kind of nice. I got a lot of information off of that. Then I got to dig into it. And then the Moth Man just came up just a week ago about being in Bloomington, Illinois. So that was really interesting too. We don't usually get Mothman reports that close to us. Usually it's around Chicago or another state. But this was like I think Jane said before the show, is like an hour and 15 minutes for us to get to Bloomington.
Yeah.
that's close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have to go there, check it out.
Yeah. We haven't been to Bloomington for a while. I think the last time we went down there was 4 years ago. We went to Outback and had steak. It's the only place that has an Outback around here.
The only bad thing is that when you go investigate, you're doing it after the fact. So you don't
Right.
even know if they're still in the area. I mean, like Mothman could be anywhere, and along with Bigfoot in the Canton area down below south of Peoria, Illinois. We could venture there and go check out the place and see if we see any signs or anything. But chances of him still being in that area is pretty slim, I would think. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't really researched a lot about Mothman. We haven't had any reports locally, and in all the years that I did UFO research, I don't think we had any local investigations on that. I only knew the one. What was it in Georgia, where the bridge was? Was it down in Georgia?
Someplace
West Virginia?
Virginia, was that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard about that. That's an old
Right.
story. So I heard about that a long time ago. But I thought it was an isolated incident. Then I started hearing about other Mothman sightings after that.
Yeah, mostly around Chicago for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, it showed up at the airport and was there and spotted by many people, obviously flying in on planes and, pedestrians getting ready to go into their planes or meeting loved ones. And they got a lot of reports of people seeing it, but then it kind of disappeared. But then like all through the city, there was all kinds of reports of it showing up in alleys and on top of buildings and in people's neighborhoods. It's like, well, I don't know. I haven't seen it. I haven't been in Chicago to see it, so I don't know if it's people jumping on the bandwagon or they're seeing something else, or maybe it is Mothman. I don't know.
Well, there hasn't been any reports of it hurting anyone, right? It's just
Not that I know
sightings
of.
of a Mothman only. So it's not like it's attacking people or anything.
I think when you see like a 8 to 9 foot tall thing with wings and red glowing eyes, I don't think you stick around long enough to.
No, I wouldn't think so.
So
Wow.
let's start talking about maybe some Bigfoot experiences or reports that you've came across, Linda.
Well, this last year I made the film Byways of Bigfoot, and that was a local. I wouldn't say it was a case. What we did was we decided to take the Niagara River, which is about 200 miles long, and go from start to finish where it dumps into Lake of the Ozarks here in Missouri. And we started at kind of the Marshville area where the river starts. And I had heard of a few Bigfoot cases along the Niagara, but nothing that close to home. There was a private property that this guy heard vocals only in the fall and spring. So, we knew that it was a possibility that there was a Bigfoot clan out that way. But as we began to research, we found 3 areas, just on the first jaunt of the river. We found 3 areas where with Bigfoot evidence. We ran into footprints. We ran into tree breaks that were very abnormal, tree type twist, really, and breaks. They weren't just breaks. We found, markings on about 9 feet up on a tree. We found trackways on the private property. And then we gifted some things out there in complicated boxes that would take a real skill to open the box and get the stuff out. Well, it sat there for a while, but just about 2 months ago, apparently something, and it would have to have been a skilled hand to open this box. I mean, it had complicated locks on it, kind of to maneuver that. Something got the peanut butter, the bars, the protein bars out, and so they were gone, and something was, and they didn't tear up the box. They were able to open the box and get this out. So something actually took that. So I think there's more activity out there now than perhaps before. But then after we made the film, this was weird, because after we made the film, then people started coming to me and telling me about actually seeing Bigfoot along that river, and some places where we were actually at along the cliffs in that film. They had seen a Bigfoot actually right there. And then a short distance from there, this was an old story, but one that that some people had heard about years ago, maybe in the 70s or so. That just, we're talking a stone's throw from that river. There's a road, a gravel road, and a gentleman had reported to the community that there was some unusual creature out there in this place, and kind of looked like a monkey, but it was really big and hairy and kind of odd looking. And so everybody's thinking, well, maybe something escaped from the zoo, because they're not thinking Bigfoot. In the 70s, it wasn't that common. And now we have all kinds of shows about Bigfoot. It's everywhere.
Right.
You hear about Bigfoot all the time. But in the 70s, you really didn't. So they just didn't come to mind that might be a Bigfoot. And then the farm across the street started talking about the same thing. They had these weird creatures on their property as well. But I'm thinking, because that was so close to where these people actually had the sighting, and where we found evidence as well, that there may be a clan that that lives out there close by there. So that was the closest I've come to a Bigfoot, was making the film Byways of Bigfoot, and that's on my YouTube channel as well. But it was an eye opener to see all of the evidence that was very present. And it's so easy to find, it was just all over the place. So I think there's something to that. Yeah.
I remember in the 70s, I think I've told this on our show before, and so most people in the chat might already know it, but we had a station wagon, the typical mom and dad and kids, story about us kids riding in the back, and the AM radio going, we're going to a family event or whatever, and we're coming home late at night. And we had the radio on, obviously, and a Bigfoot report came on. That's the first time I ever heard it. It came across the actual radio, like almost like a news break, that a Bigfoot was spotted in southern Illinois, and this was in the 70s. So I don't remember exactly what year. It might have been close to the same time you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was crazy. I didn't even really know what a Bigfoot was, I don't think. But my older brothers and sisters obviously was trying to scare me and telling me stories about, all this stuff. And like, oh, we just saw one. It's over there, as we're going home late at night from a family thing. So that was really the first experience that I thought was really strange, that they actually reported a Bigfoot sighting on the radio.
Yeah.
You won't hear that these days.
Probably not.
Maybe a small local channel might, but not in the mainstream, definitely.
Hmm.
We had an old report back in it's probably the 1800s. I'm not sure exactly how old it is, of Bigfoot living down in closer to the Boot Hill, not quite to the Boot Hill of Missouri, and it was called Blue Man, because it had a coat that was so black that when the sun would shine on it, it was kind of a bluish color. Now that was reported by numerous people. So I really do think there was something like that there. And then close to the town of West Plains, Willow Springs, in that area, there've been a lot of Bigfoot reports down in that neck of the woods.
Wow.
Wow.
So, have you ever heard a report or anything about different colored fur on Bigfoots? I mean, from black to brown to, I don't know if we've
Gray.
had any that's been white or gray or
Yeah, all the above. Red
yeah.
is probably a reddish tone, a rusty red color is probably the most common, followed by brown and black, and then a few gray, or sometimes just completely white. I don't think I've ever heard of one that's more like a blonde color. I don't think I've heard blonde. I've heard, white, gray, and then it
Mhm.
goes into brown, black, and kind of this reddish tone.
So has the
And then
white been in the US? Because
Mhm.
usually when I think of a white, I think of like a Yeti or something up in the mountains where the snow and stuff is, so they blend in. But there's actually been white here in the
Yeah.
US?
I'm
Mhm.
not gonna be able to recall exactly where those reports came from, but in the interviews that I've done, I do recall several people who saw one that was white. Now, it could have been gray, and they just
Right.
reported it as white, but it seems like they age and they do lose the
Mm.
pigment in of their hair color at some point, or, it could be an albino, who knows, it could be one that just doesn't have coloring in their fur. But yeah, I've heard of it a few times. Mostly it's the brown and red, though.
Wow.
Yeah, our friend Blazer from Montana said they've seen some white ones in that area.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
that would make sense. I mean, I guess up northern US where we get a lot of snow and it stays in the mountains. I don't know, maybe that's it. Now, do
Could
you
be.
think like the skunk ape and stuff, is that like a Bigfoot? Is that just a different take on the area for a Bigfoot, or is that a completely separate?
Yeah, it's probably a Bigfoot, but it's a different, because of the different climate. They're much smaller, I hear, and just they have a little bit of a different appearance, but and much much smaller. But due to the climate, it's probably why. The heat and just numerous things would impact, I think, the way they look. But yeah, I think they're definitely related to Bigfoot.
Hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, we've heard reports of the more north you go, the more aggressive they get. Have you heard
I've
similar
heard a
reports?
little about that, yeah,
Mhm.
but mostly the reports are the aggression happens, when there's a young one around or a nest or something, where there's more of a protection. They don't want them in there for some reason. Um, but I can say that I have had mostly reports of non-aggressive action,
Mhm.
but most of the time it may be just a fleeting sighting. It's not one that's real close and up front. Dogman's a different story. Usually it's more of an aggressive attack like stance that
Mm.
Dogman takes, where Bigfoot doesn't necessarily. But if Bigfoot doesn't want you in there, they'll let you know, but it may just be, it's more like intimidation than it is really, actual action to harm.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Almost a warning or stay out.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I was going
Wow.
to ask something. Now I can't remember what it was. Gosh darn it. Oh, I was going to say there was a report of someone saying that the hair on the Bigfoot that they saw thought it was like a clear, almost kind of like polar bears have like a clear hair and it reflects off of the environment they're in. So they were wondering, or I was wondering, do you think that their hair has a way of collecting sunlight? You said the one was so black it looked blue. Would that create a haze or a frequency around them, and that's why people get blurry pictures or don't get to see them very well, because of their hair or their body putting out frequencies or sunlight or reflecting it?
Well, that's a good point. I don't think I've heard that stated before. It could be. I don't know. I definitely have known of people that got samples of the hair, though, and it did seem to have that kind of clear state where it reflects, whatever's around them,
Hmm.
which would make a lot of sense of why it's so easy for them to hide if they're able to blend in that well with their environment.
Right.
Yeah, because every once in a while you'll hear people talk about them being dimensional or have
Mhm.
abilities like almost supernatural, whether they can cloak themselves or maybe we're like we were talking blend in really well. We can't see them, but if they are dimensional, I mean, have you had reports or people say that to you also?
Oh, yeah, lots of people that everything from an orb turning into a Bigfoot and a Bigfoot turning into an orb, to they would just disappear, or seeing only half of the Bigfoot, or see footprints being made like in snow or whatever right beside them, but there's nothing there. It's just the footprints being made. But if you go back to Native American tales, they believe that they lived in two worlds. That was easy for them to come and go. I've even had people say, like they're actually fairies, that they live inside the trees. I've had reports of people seeing them come out of a tree or going into a tree. Now, whether they were actually just blending in that tree or they were actually coming and going from the tree, I don't know. But nonetheless, that's, they perceived it to be that they were coming and going and exiting and coming from a tree. So yeah, I think there's something to the keepers of the forest. They have some kind of, if not a paranormal skill to appear and disappear, they certainly are fooling a lot of people in another way, because people do see them coming and going. Now, a lot of people just see a flesh and blood being, and they have young ones, and they're eating, and they're pooping in the woods. There's all kinds of reports that there are definitely some flesh and blood characteristics to a Bigfoot.
Right.
But, at the same time, do all of them have these characteristics? I don't know. Do they, and people have talked about the Patterson-Gimlin film. It's like if Bigfoot has the ability to just poof, go up into another dimension, why didn't Patty go up into another dimension rather than run?
Right.
We don't know. Could be that there were young ones there too. Who knows? Or maybe, maybe they can't do it under all circumstances. I don't know.
Yeah, we had heard that Patty was protecting her children, or they thought her family was their young ones or whatever. So she was trying to draw the attention to them or to her to take them, just like any animal, try to lure you away from their babies or their nest.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that very well could be, because I think a lot of people think that, that they create noise and sounds and distractions while something else. I remember hearing one report where a man had inherited some land down in Arkansas. And it was that this land was it was down a really narrow, hilly road. There was almost like a side of a mountain. You had to get to it, to this land. And he was driving, it was dead end also. So he was driving to this property one day when he saw this little blob in the road in front of him. And this was a one-way road. It's really narrow. And he stopped when he saw this Bigfoot coming out from his left, from up the hill, was coming down and swooped this little critter up and then took off down the hill the other direction in the woods. And he's like looking at this and thinking, what is this? And then he looks back up the hillside, and there is this enormous Papa Bigfoot, just really not happy camper that anything had come that close, I guess, to the baby. So he's like, he didn't know what to do. He's in his truck. And he's not sure. So he watches this scene for a while, and then eventually decides to just, go as fast as he can on down to his property. But there's only one way out of there, and that's back down that same trail. That's it.
Wow.
So he goes down there just kind of startled, doesn't know exactly, what to do, and waits for a while, and eventually makes his way back down that road. And as he does, there's no sign of a Bigfoot, but there is a dead deer, really close by there. He goes on back into town. It's a small town. He goes to McDonald's. He sits there, he gets a cup of coffee, and he just sits there and looks at the coffee for several hours, not knowing for sure what to do with this thing that this family that he just saw. These things were huge. They're not supposed to exist. He didn't know what they were for sure. And he owns property down there. He's going to have to go back at some point, probably. So he waited a long, long time before he finally told someone. He told an investigator that I know. I don't know that he ever gave a full report of that, publicly or anything like that, because he really wasn't wanting attention. He more needed to tell someone eventually, because it was just so upsetting and trying to him. So, that was a kind of an interesting story, and that's not too far from here. That's just south of West Plains where he had that experience.
We have a question that popped up from Elaine. She wanted to know if there's any time where they are most prominent. Do they have seasons where they migrate? Do you know of, or do they stay in one area all the time like we do as families and communities?
Well, it seems that there are two answers to that. Some of them do, some clans do stay put if they have a safe environment, lots of food resource. It seems like they don't move around much. Another clans seem to migrate. Go through an area, and they have their route they do through the seasons, mostly because of food sources, I think. So I think different ones accomplish different things. They do seem to be family oriented. They don't seem to be loners. So they tend to, when they move together. But even on these properties where they are most of the time, they will still migrate. They'll migrate. They'll stay in one area for a few months, and they'll migrate to another area on that property. And that's probably because of their food source. They allow it to build back up and reproduce, but they may have a yearly cycle as to where they are. Some of them also think that they make a route from north to south. Maybe also with the seasons due to different population of animals or fish or whatever.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly why they would do that. Others think they also travel through waterways and caves. Those are other ways that they travel.
Mhm.
But it doesn't seem to be that, that they're in just like a home setting, where they have the picket fence and the little shack or anything like that. They don't seem to establish a one spot where they are. So they migrate, whether it be short distances or long distances. They do seem to migrate somewhat.
Right. That would make sense. Cause I mean, say this family or clan happens to live in the cave systems or whatever. Well, we don't know how big a radius their normal migration and for that area. Just like a fox will go miles and miles and away from their den searching for whether it's mates or other food sources or whatever. They could be gone almost a whole day or 2 days before they actually come back to their den. So I'm just wondering, maybe that's why Bigfoot are seen in so many different areas, because they have a natural, I mean, something that big can go quite a few miles, I would assume in a day. So they could be way away from where they normally start, then eventually come all the way back.
Right. That's true.
The other thing I was wondering is what height? Is there any particular height for Bigfoot that you've been getting reports? Are they the 8 to 9 to 10 foot range, where like in Canada, sometimes people say they're up north or bigger and stouter, where they're like almost 20 feet tall? Sometimes they report.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of a 20-foot tall. I think 12 foot's about the tallest one that I have heard of. But yeah, around 8, 9, 10, feet tall is common. And that's common. Now there are shorter ones because they're females and they're juveniles, and so it goes up. And of course the skunk apes, they're shorter, they're smaller, they don't have that kind of height or stature that the big ones have. Oftentimes it's the females or the juveniles that are witnessed, because they tend to be a little bit more out there, where the males are not as social as some of the juveniles really like to kind of contact people and play with people and be closer to them, and they're out and about more.
Yeah, we hear reports of people talking about juveniles coming, whether it's on somebody's farm or their property, and play at the animals, get them all wound up, and
Typical teenagers.
just like a human gets into mischief once in a while or likes to play and have fun. I guess they do too.
Yeah, they also like to go into campsites and kind of disrupt things too.
Now you hear reports of one carrying a baby. Have you ever heard a report of them actually having twins and had two?
No, I have not had a report on twins. I'm sure they do, but I have not heard of a twin setting.
Right, I haven't either. It's usually just one baby that she has.
Yeah,
I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Of course, I don't even really know if we know what size they are when they're born even.
Yeah, I don't know. This one that the guy ran into driving down the road, and there was a blob he said it was like a basket size, it's just small basket size, and it was just like a little furry ball, just rolled up, and it sounded like that one was pretty small. maybe the size of a newborn or baby, or maybe 6 months old, up to 6 months old, of a human baby, maybe somewhere around that size.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so we don't really know if their bodies can actually have twins, depending on what size they are when they're born. I mean,
true.
Yeah, but you never hear them. You always hear of one baby, but I've never heard anyone talk about a Sasquatch having twins with her.
Right.
Because other species do. I mean, you can have twins with, other different animals, deer. And so it just makes you wonder if they can't, makes you wonder why.
I don't know. Maybe they do. We just don't know.
Right.
Then Val wants to know if you've had any UFO and Bigfoot sightings coinciding with each other. And I think we've had reports where they've hitched rides supposedly with UFOs, or we talked about orbs and Bigfoots.
Yeah. Stan Gordon of Pennsylvania, he had reports of people seeing a UFO craft and Bigfoot interacting with the aliens at that location. For me, for people that I've talked to, there was this one that was just really odd. This guy felt like he had been abducted by aliens all of his life, and he was often on board a craft. And at one point he saw this test tube, and there was a Bigfoot inside this kind of, test tube thing. And he kept asking these aliens, why, do you make those? Is that something you make? And they kept saying, no, we just research them. So it could be that they're, that Bigfoot's just a subject of theirs, of, the aliens, that they're just researching them as well. I don't know that for sure. Now, another case that an interview that I did, this was a really interesting kind of UFO Bigfoot connection, but this guy had become really familiar with a clan of Bigfoot in his area. And he would often, hike through the woods there. There was a path that he would take, and they knew he was there. He knew they were there. They kind of left each other alone, but they knew each other. They were able to live peacefully and interact slightly with one another. And one day he was out there walking on that path, and he noticed this big tree that had been placed across the path. And it was a huge tree, and didn't see a source for it anywhere. So, it's like something had deliberately placed it there, he thought. And his thought is, okay, they don't want me in here, and he didn't know why. So he went home, got his son and another researcher, and later that night they drove out there to that mountainous area where Bigfoot usually hangs out. They parked their Jeep and walked up the hill where they had a really good sight, a really good place where they had a good vision down to the automobile, but they also had a good vision of the valley below. It was a wooded area, but there was a valley below. And after it got dark, there were 12 pair of eyeshine. That means there would have been 12 Bigfoot surrounding the automobile down there. So they're just watching them. It seemed peaceful. They weren't really doing anything other than just hanging around his Jeep. And then suddenly there was this UFO, this fast-moving, well-lit, bright UFO that comes from the right, and it just goes really fast, swoops down into the valley and lands. And immediately these 12 pair of eyeshine turn around and stampede down that hill to that UFO craft. And, he said he could hear them. It was like just, making tons of noise, running as fast as they could down there to that craft. Now, he doesn't know, and I don't know, if it was a rendezvous they had planned, and that's why they didn't want him out there on that path, or if they were just curious and ran down there to see what was going on with that UFO craft. So that's probably the closest one that really connects them together that I've actually heard of. The one in the test tube, you just don't know for sure. He was already abducted by aliens in a craft, so you don't know, what exactly his perception was, if it was correct or not, that was a Bigfoot. And you never know if the aliens are telling him the truth, that they're just researching them or not. Some people have said that they dropped them off in force that in order to investigate forced life or forced living or something. I don't know if the UFO are doing that or not, if they're dropping off Bigfoot to live or inhabit our planet or not. It does seem like a lot more people these days have interaction with Bigfoot than they've ever had before, however. They always have, and they just didn't talk about it because it's kind of taboo to have a Bigfoot encounter. But people are certainly talking about it a lot more now.
Right. Now we have a friend. what is Kentucky Bigfoot? What's his?
Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot.
I don't know if you know him or not, but he told us that he thought that there was two different kinds of Bigfoot, or whether you call one Sasquatch or one Bigfoot, or however you want to term them, that one species of them or kind is in like captivity with aliens, where they're controlled almost like slaves, and they were here originally to mine or do whatever the resources for the aliens were, and then the other ones are ones that either escaped or was here naturally, like flesh and blood, and do the normal things like we would do, have a home and shelter and food and all this. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of two different one's with aliens and one without?
I haven't, but that would kind of make sense, that they may not be of the same thing. Some of them may have these special properties. Some may have connections with aliens, maybe even interbred with aliens, who knows? And then others might just be flesh and blood, creatures on the planet. I don't know.
Yeah, because he said, or he thought that the ones that were connected with the UFOs and aliens had special abilities because of technology. They obviously have technology, so somehow they had like belts or some kind of device where they could be dimensional in and out and cloak and all this stuff. So I don't know if that explains some of the things that people were witnessing, because there's two different ones. I mean, like you said, kind of makes sense, but I don't know really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, and it could be, it's the UFO craft that's causing them to appear and disappear. They certainly seem to be able to take humans that way, that they're in their bed and the next thing they know, they're being sucked up into a UFO craft. So it could be that rather than seeing a Bigfoot appear and disappear, maybe there's some other element like a UFO that's present that's causing that. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, one time I still kind of do, but I mean, you hear all these theories of people, so you kind of mix things up, and like one day you believe one thing, and another day it's like, well, I'm kind of leaning towards this today. But originally I had thought that, okay, they're flesh and blood, and just like Native Americans and shamans, that there's certain ones that were in a hierarchy that had special gifts because they dealt with the spirits or a source, and everybody else was just kind of normal hunt and gather, do their daily things. But there was one that was like a shaman, like a Bigfoot would be a shaman or a leader that would have special abilities in dealing with the supernatural stuff.
Yeah, that could be. I was right there with you. It's like when I first started, the only concept I had of a Bigfoot was one that was flesh and blood. And then it wasn't until the story started trickling in about them having all of these different properties, and and you put that in the back of your mind and think, yeah, maybe, who knows. But then once I heard it over and over and over again, and that was authentically their experience, I felt then I had to give it more credibility that, okay, these things may not be just flesh and blood, or at least some of them may not be just flesh and blood.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me that, just like we have religious leaders, or the Native Americans had shaman and medicine man, and they're just different than us, whether they can see into the supernatural or into the realms. I would imagine maybe that would work for them too. And it kind of fits. So, I mean, whether they're connected to the UFOs, or maybe it's both happening at the same time. I don't really know.
Right.
So Jojo wants to know, do you think they live underground? Is there species coming from inner Earth, or just a cave system maybe?
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone discuss them coming from inner Earth. Caves, yeah, that's kind of maybe a practical place for them, a place they could hide, a place they could be safe, get them out of the elements at times if they needed to. That might be something. Now, when we made Byways of Bigfoot, there's a lot of caves that they could possibly occupy here in Missouri, especially along that river. But Ron Bowles was in that show, and he pointed out, Ron Bowles is a pretty good sized guy, if anybody knows Ron Bowles. But he said, Bigfoot's a lot bigger than me. It's going to be hard for him to get in some of these entrances to these caves. And that is true. Some of them are really small entrances. So they'd have to have a cave system that they could maneuver in, because I don't think a lot of caves would be able to handle a Bigfoot. But, there again, if they've been here for umpteen years, they probably found the cave systems that work for them.
Or they pop in the orbs, and that's how they go into the caves.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that brings the whole dimensional thing up again. If they can go inside of trees and use them as portals, or hide, or work with elementals, or
turn into a tree stump.
Some people say they are elemental, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you think they use portals? Have you heard those reports?
Well, there's an area in Georgia that I've interviewed a couple of people that research down there, that they found this meadow that has what they call a portal. And I know in that area, there's a lot of UFO craft. There's Bigfoot. There's everything underneath the sun. Now, a couple of guys actually went in this portal. This portal can only be seen through infrared light. They discovered it that way. You can't see it with the naked eye. They were out there and they saw this box that was in the middle of this field. And, they didn't know what it was, but it was showing up as a color scheme, on the infrared camera. So a couple of guys went over and they actually went inside it, and they described it this way. They described it was like walking through a black curtain. And when they were inside that area, everything changed. They couldn't see the stars, the sky anymore. They couldn't see the forest around them, the floor, the ground, which was like heavy, tall grass. Suddenly it was flat. Everything was normal. And inside there, it was kind of blank, I guess. But then when they walked, it felt like they were walking through jello, like everything was slowed down, or something was different. Oh. They didn't stay very long. When they came out, they described all of that. But that might be some kind of a place where they could enter and exit. I don't know. They didn't, they obviously were in a different reality inside this box, but they didn't know for sure. I know whenever they exited it too, I think that the box itself shrunk and moved a little bit to a different location, and then it would move around in the field some, and then it would expand again. And, so it had different maneuverable properties, almost like a craft itself. And it could be that, maybe it was a craft of some sort. It was a cube, it was a box. But maybe that's how craft become invisible to us. Maybe they turn into something that, is of a different dimensional element, and you can't see them unless you have infrared light to be able to see them through. But maybe it was a craft itself. Who knows?
Yeah, we've heard that story, because it was Jessica Jones, a cryptid hunter, so it was her team.
Yeah, she's one of the researchers out there.
Yeah.
Trey Hudson. I originally heard it at a UFO conference. Trey Hudson, I think, was the original one. And Jessica goes out there a lot with them and researches. And then I interviewed someone else. I can't remember his name right off, that also went out there. And, independently, they all, can confirm, had little different experiences, but they can each confirm, that this thing exists. Now, there's another place here in Missouri called Marley Woods. You may have heard of that. I don't know.
Marley Woods?
Yeah, Marley Woods. It also has a lot of very, very strange things happening there. I don't remember a box reported there, but they have Bigfoot sightings. They've had Dogman sightings there. They have not ordinary poltergeist stuff. We're talking about big, heavy farm equipment being shoved into a building, things like that.
Oh, wow.
They have UFO craft. I know the two main researchers there was driving from one area of the property. Now, there's about 750 acres, so it's a big place. So they were driving from one area to another when they saw a craft coming over, and they stopped the car and got out. And this craft shot some kind of a beam down upon them. Both of them got sick. One of them threw up, the other one didn't. But the one that didn't throw up, within 2 months, his hair had turned completely white, and he started developing some heart issues, I believe, some kind of a physical health issue. So these things can be kind of dangerous. And this place has a lot of the same activity like Skinwalker Ranch has. And, people get hurt on Skinwalker Ranch because of some of whether it be radiation or whatever it is out there. And Marley Woods, they were the same crew, I think, that did Skinwalker Ranch came out to film here at Marley Woods. And they finally, the owners of the property, because some of the crew in the filming a group got hurt by some of the various things that were happening there. So they said, no, they didn't want the liability. They didn't want them to film anymore. So they stopped production of the show. But there was a horse, a really prized horse in one of the barns at one time. And this was really sad because the man who owned the horse had just gone into the barn not long before this. Everything was good. Horse was fine. The guy walked out, was going on up the lane some way. And all of a sudden, the horse just exploded, almost like a microwave, maybe beam or microwave, type of activity, which is, can be extremely dangerous if there's, it's like open microwaves around. Another thing they had happen there, things would move. They had this little shack that they would stay. The researchers would stay there for months on end, and they had things on a table, and things would be moved. They had some super high speed cameras that should have been able to pick up most movement that happened. But rather than to pick up movement, they never saw movement. It would just disappear in one location and appear in another location. Wow. Now that's kind of spooky. That's some weird stuff going on there. Why they were never able to figure out what was going on, geologically. Was it something was it something to do with radiation in the area? What caused all of these things to happen at the same time? But for me, you talk about the correlation between Bigfoot, cryptids, unusual paranormal activity, and UFOs. I mean, that's all happening right there at Marley Woods.
Wow.
Yeah.
As at some point I want to discuss that case 841, because that's the one that I'm researching that has everything also happening. It doesn't seem to be dangerous like Marley Woods is, though.
Yeah, okay. You're talking about health and this, going back to what happened at the Meadow. The two guys that did go into that portal, they're both passed away now.
Exactly. One of cancer, and I think the other one of heart disease.
Yeah.
They don't know 100% for sure that going into that box, that odd thing, caused it, but it's you have to wonder.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, we talk about Bigfoot and infrasound, and a portal would have to have some kind of frequency or energy. So we don't know if the human bodies can adapt to that. So maybe somehow they got their internal organs, or something happened to their DNA when they got close enough to it or in it. I mean, I think they actually entered the portal or the energy field.
Yeah. It's really hard to say. I mean, they didn't have any, measuring devices with them while they were in there. I don't think. I never heard of that if they did. So I don't know if they, know what kind of energy they were really dealing with. And that's the kind of scary part.
Well, that kind of reminds me of, I'm losing track now. It's got to be around 7 years ago that we got our AT and night vision binoculars. And I did not realize you can see orbs and all kinds of crazy things with these. Well, there was one time that I saw this good-sized square, and it looked glitchy on the inside, and it was moving along the tree line. So I was getting ready to record with the binoculars, and it fried out the binoculars totally. So we had to send them into the company and got a new pair. And it was a good sized square.
Yeah. Well, in Colorado Ranch, Katie Page grew up there, and when she was just a little girl, she was out kind of the back of the property with her dad and one stepbrother. And she turned around and saw this. Well, she heard something. She turned around and there was this box in it, but she could see it. I mean, it wasn't invisible. She could see it. But it was making kind of a metallic hissing sound, very odd. It had lights on it. And she's like, what is this? And her dad saw it, and he's like, come on, get in the truck. And 8-year-old kids, they were kind of slow about it. She turned around to get in the truck, and then she turned right back around, and this thing was gone. But she later found out that this thing was not uncommon to be witnessed there. And there was a report that she read, and I'm not sure if this report was from the military or if it was from UFO researchers, that this box was known, that if it came in contact with a Bigfoot, it would, take them onto their knees immediately and had the power to kill them. And if you ever touched it, you would be dead. So it seemed like it was a very powerful thing that she was witnessing, if that be true. If the report be true.
Oh my.
Wow.
Never heard that before.
Yeah, those boxes are different than the orbs. The orbs seem to be, pretty innocent. They don't seem
Yeah.
to have a lot. But now the guys out at Marley Woods, they had, I guess, observed and correlated that certain color of orbs meant that there was probably something going to happen that wasn't going to be quite pleasant. And usually it was, if it was in the realm of the orange and red colored orbs, there was something going to happen that would be maybe dangerous or something. If it was in the white, blues, greens, all of those colors,
Right.
it was going to be fine. They didn't have to worry about those. Most of the orbs I hear about are white. Sometimes they have some color, but not often.
Yeah, it seems like that's what we catch is white, or I don't know, kind of pearl, kind of translucent sometimes. And
Well,
but
the two that I've seen with my naked eye was orange.
Okay. Yeah.
oh,
Now, the orange light, the only thing I've ever seen related with, it wasn't really an orb, but it was an orange light, but it was an animal mutilation in the field where I saw that orange light.
wow.
Interesting. Wow.
Now these portals or these energy fields, I've heard reports or tales of people that have been out for hikes in the forest or on trails or whatever. Then all of a sudden they feel like a brain fog, or they feel like they're lost, and they've been on these trails many times in their lives, and all of a sudden things look different. The sun's no longer out when it was before when they started. And then they feel kind of sick to their stomach, almost like an infrasound kind of deal. And then all of a sudden they start feeling better. Then it's like they're back to where they were. They like either they were walked into a portal and they're in a different dimension, or the surroundings started changing on them. Have you ever heard any reports like that?
Yeah, and that took me back to the UFO research I did early on, and from the 90s on, that missing time, where they would have space of missing time, disorientation, not knowing for sure what happened to them during that time, or in a few cases in UFO situations they ended up in another location, even they had no idea how they got there. But when I started hearing that repeated in with Bigfoot encounters, a couple of researchers, I think from Kansas, drove up to Illinois actually to do some research. And they knew exactly how long it took to get home. And they were driving back home, and 5 hours later they missed, they weren't home yet. When they should have been. They missed about 5 hours of time. So they thought that was very strange. Another case where a guy was in the woods and he has a Bigfoot encounter, and he knows he's only 5 minutes away from his automobile. He knows where it is. It's real close. He finds himself just going in circles, disoriented, going in circles in the woods. But also he was a couple of hours before he got back to his automobile. Yeah. That sounded remarkably like people who have alien encounters or UFO encounters.
Right.
So that was one of the correlations I made between the Bigfoot and the UFO. There's something, whether they're actually related or not, or connected or do things together, I don't know. But it sounds like if they all exist in another dimension, that these people are either being drawn into this other dimension with a weird experience, or this other dimension is contacting them in some way, with some kind of a weird experience. And we're not accustomed to maybe being influenced by that encounter, influenced by those things, wherever they are. So if we're kind of drawn into that, whether it just be consciously or whether it be totally physically drawn into it, that could really disorient us if we're not ready to deal with it, or don't know how to even interpret it.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, because we don't know how frequencies. I mean, we use frequencies and vibrations in medicine to cure. Like I know my father had kidney stones, and they use ultrasound to break up the kidney stones in a salt bath. So we don't really know what an infrasound or any kind of projection out of a portal would do to our bodies, or whether it caused brain fog or injure certain organs in our body or alter them.
That's true. And then on top of that, I mean, way back, I mean, this is really going down, a rabbit hole here for a second, but way back in the early 90s when I was doing hypnosis, I wasn't just working with people who felt like they'd been abducted by aliens. I was also teaching hypnosis and, working with people for all kinds of reasons. And it's in this one class that I had, there was a man that was taking the class, and he was really devoted. It was a 12-week course, and we were about 4 weeks in. Had a lot of people in that class, so I offered an extra practice night for people to get in more practice with hypnosis. And he came one night, it was a Sunday night, and he was the only one that showed up that night. So we were going to practice hypnosis, but he started telling me this really bizarre kind of out on a limb story. He said that he had moved back east. He was from here in Missouri, but he had moved back east and went to school and met a woman and got married. And she was from some really, really deep pockets money, old money, just really, really deep pockets kind of money. And his father-in-law and brother-in-laws and her uncles and all of them, they were all part of this secret organization. He said I would know it if he told me what it was, but he would not tell me the name of the organization. So because he was related to them now, they took him up the ranks really, really fast. So he was like at the top rank of this organization with his family. And they practiced a lot of really, kind of weird occult things, but one of the things that they practiced was being able to do telepathy and send messages, but also project images to people. And he was kind of on the receiving end of that, where they would project things, and he learned, he could see these things. But he had long since been divorced, moved back to Missouri, and now he was taking my hypnosis class. So he's telling me this story. And then he starts telling me that he believes he's still under the control of this group organization. And they are projecting things to him. But listen to what they're projecting. They're projecting aliens in his house. They're projecting UFOs outside of his home. They're projecting headlines on newspapers that things that haven't even happened yet. They're asking him questions, mentally, and all of this sort of thing is going on with him. And so that made me have to, kind of stop and think. And he said this very reluctantly, by the way. You could tell he didn't think maybe he should even be telling me. But he left the class that night, and 2 days later, he didn't show up for class, called, and his number had been disconnected. In 2 days, he just stepped out off the planet. So I don't know if he was there, telling me this was possible, or if he was there just, really was trying to get some help to, get rid of this mind control situation he was in. I'm not sure what was going on. But after that, I did some research, and since the early 60s, actually, we have technology now that also can plant an image in your mind that's like virtual reality. You can't even tell the difference between it and an actual physical thing that's there. So you have to, look at all of these possibilities. And I'm not discounting by any means the actual experiences that people have, and not at all. Because I've been listening to these things since the 90s. And, I do believe that people have these experiences. But we also have to look at all of the possibilities otherwise, too. Could there be some kind of a projection mind to mind? Could there be some kind of technological projection? And what would be the point or the purpose in even doing that? I don't know.
Right.
But it could be just to test out the technology. I don't know.
Right. I mean, I saw a report the other day where they've actually was able to visibly see your dreams on a monitor that the scientists and the people were researching. So if they can see your dreams, that leads me to think, just like you were saying, they could probably insert new dreams or alter your dreams.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, the technology that exists today, that every person has a signature frequency. Even when I do my intuitive work, that's what I connect with. That's what you can see. That's what identifies that person as opposed to everybody else when you're trying to connect with something. So, you have a signature frequency, and that signature frequency, they could project anything they wanted to you, and you wouldn't know if it was your thought or somebody else's thought. You don't know if it's your perception or if it's a visual perception that's being implanted. Actually, some of this has been used in war, even, doing this in battle, and they were able to, stop entire forces, just based on a message sent to all of them simultaneously. So these are powerful technologies that we're dealing with today, but they've been around for a while. I mean, they were working on these in 1960. So these have been around a while, and you have to just really, really consider, that these things are part of our reality today, and question, everything. So you don't know where stuff's coming from.
Yeah, that's horrible. I mean, just to think, everybody talks about, you know, how you're talking, like me and Jamie talking about something, and all of a sudden on Google or Facebook, the ad will pop up of exactly what we were just talking about. So
Yeah, nothing's
imagine,
private.
your dreams being like that. Could they like insert, you know, ideas and Facebook messages, you know, that okay, this product, push this, almost like billboards in our dreams. I
Yeah.
mean, imagine how horrible that is.
Yeah, yeah. I think it could happen in dreams or waking life, be the one. I mean, I think it's you know, once and everybody's signature, they say that they can just scan the whole planet, you know, and pick up your signature. It's like your cell phone. I mean, your cell phone is easily scanned. That is trackable.
Right.
They know exactly where your cell phone is, but you have a signature frequency as well. You're trackable as well, just like a cell phone. You know, I
Yep.
don't think people realize just how evident. Now, most of us probably there's no reason to track us because we're not doing
Right.
anything, you know,
Right.
and there's nothing there. Now, I did do work with a lady, this was probably late 90s, who she had a memory of a childhood incident where she and her brother saw a UFO. And because she saw this, she started having memories that started flashing back, you know, and she went under hypnosis, and she had a lot of strong memories of, you know, the abductions and things and being on craft and such. But then as time progressed, she started having flashbacks of not only being there on a craft, but she was also, you know, with military. And she lived really close to, I think it was an Air Force base or a military base of some sort. And she was having, you know, these like memories of being inside, you know, a hangar with a UFO and the military at the same time. And now she honestly believes she was part of some kind of a mind control program that was drawing her in to see, you know, what she would perceive or what she could perceive. And I think a lot of that then was coming back to her. And she had, you know, her house was broken into a couple of times. She taught at a university, and they would follow her. And there was just a lot of weirdness that started happening around her life at that time. So there could be mind control programs, there could be UFO programs, there could be secret society programs, there could be all kinds of things that contribute to some of these UFO experiences. Possibly Bigfoot too, but you know, I haven't heard of a lot of that with Bigfoot. I take that back. I have heard of some black helicopters flying over heavy research areas with Bigfoot. You know, where there's kind of a silencing, don't want, you know, Bigfoot known. I can understand that just because Bigfoot's a scary creature. There could be park services might not want that to be very obvious, you know, that there's a Bigfoot in the area
Right.
because it can be scary. Yeah.
Well, we hear of reports of, you know, where national parks or even state parks all of a sudden will close down in a section of a park. You know, is that to protect us or to protect Bigfoot or cryptids that might be spotted in that area, or they're studying them, or maybe even releasing something in a park that we're not supposed to know about?
That could be. You know, I don't know, but there are lots of national parks that's happened. Yeah, I've heard of the same thing.
And there's no reason. And I've heard reports of people going past the barricades, going down that path anyway, and saw nothing
Yeah.
that was
Now,
strange.
there was, I heard a report from a man he was actually in the military, and he and another guy decided to go camping. They were in Oklahoma, but they went over to Arkansas to this camping place, and they did that very thing. There was this area that was blocked off. They wanted some primitive camping. They didn't want just camping. They wanted some primitive camping. So they decided to go over that barrier that said, you know, no trespassing or whatever, and hike, you know, up the hill. And they found this really, really cool place. They said it was picturesque. There were trees all around, but it was kind of an open meadow like up there. And they didn't question why there was maybe an open meadow in the woods, you know, at the top of this hill. But it was a great spot. So they set up camp, and in the middle of the night, guess what? There's a UFO lands right outside their tent, and they were both burned drastically. So when they made it back, they were taken immediately into the hospital. And they were separated. They were told never to speak to one another at all. And one of them was shipped off to another country.
Wow.
So that was a really, you know, eye opener. Now, the man that I heard this from, he had UFO sightings and contact all of his life. He remembered as a child looking out his window and, seeing UFOs. So it wasn't all that new to him, but as an adult, he didn't remember that happening. His friend had never seen a UFO. So those were some, scary things. And there again, there was that physical harm too, that radiation burn.
Right.
Wow. Now, have you ever heard of the correlation between Bigfoot or cryptid sightings and national parks and 411 missing people? I mean, how the maps overlap each other, where it's a big concentration around the national parks?
I've heard of that. I haven't had anyone come on my show and talk about that. So I don't have any firsthand witness stories about people, just ending up missing at all. But I definitely am familiar with that book and that story that, that some people really do believe that there's, something about this. I guess I kind of question it a little bit just based on how many people I have interviewed, like 400 people, and I haven't had any of them state that they were taken or abducted or harmed or, anything like that,
Right.
or knew of anyone that was, yelled at, screamed at, intimidated, rocks thrown at them, sure, but not physically harmed. So I kind of question, if it's really Bigfoot. It could be Dogman. I've heard Dogman, it is vicious. But Bigfoot doesn't seem to be as much so.
Right.
Have you heard of any reports of Dogman being kind? Because I've heard some reports of Dogman actually helping them out of the woods and things from other cryptids.
I
So
haven't.
Have you heard good reports of Dogman?
I haven't. I haven't had that many Dogman stories, but they've all been really scary.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Now, Jane came up with a theory one night when we were talking about if a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch can cloak or kind of make themselves invisible or blend in, could they have taken a hiker, and when they grab them, do the hikers become invisible with them or cloaked, where people say 411, well, it was right there on the trail, then they're gone. So could it be a Bigfoot or alien abduction or?
Well, it could be. I mean, I haven't heard that before, but that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, well, I just thought if there's a young child, I mean, you're walking in the path, they grab that child or person, they're instantly cloaked also. And then they turn around like, where's my family member? Well, they're right there, but you just can't see them because they just got cloaked into a different dimension, if that makes any sense.
Or however it works, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how it works. But yeah, if that be the case, that would explain a lot of missing people and a lot of missing incidences that that we don't know. I haven't heard of them cloaking and taking someone. I mean, of course, if they're cloaked, how would people know?
Right.
But I also haven't heard that if they're cloaked, then whatever they pick up would be cloaked as well. But it's very possible.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the first time I heard it is when Jane just came up with it, and I thought, well, that could make sense. I mean, if they're getting their cloak to where you can't see them, and then they just happen to grab somebody or whatever, then they might possibly be cloaked too. So I don't know.
It makes sense.
Exactly.
You're darn well that child or your sister or whatever, family member was right next to you, and you can't see them anywhere around. It just seemed like, well, I just wonder if they grab them, they'd get cloaked in.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we're over the hour mark. So let's talk. You said you wanted to talk about the case that you're studying.
Yeah, that 10-mile radius, case 841. I talked about the orange light, and I was there watching that one night. It was about 10 o'clock at night. This is a very, very rural area, no houses around except the driveway there where I was sitting in. I saw this orange light above the horizon. There was a pasture, and then beyond that, a tree line and an orange light up there. I watched it for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then it slowly went down behind the tree line. And the next day, I heard from other people who lived in the area that there was a cow mutilated right there in that very pasture that I was seeing this orange light. And also a cow to the farm to the left and the farm to the right. Now, this was never made public because these were farmers and they're not going to say, oh, UFO or something weird like that.
Right.
They did call the sheriff out. The cows were indeed mutilated. No one got to investigate that situation, but that did happen to me. And then just a short distance from there's a lake, and 3 guys saw a blue donut shaped craft just skimming across the water of this lake.
Oh,
Just a short distance from there, a guy pulled up to a highway at a stop sign, looked over to his right, and there's a Bigfoot that's walking down the ditch and into the woods. I've heard wood knocks out at that lake as well. When we were out there filming once, we heard wood knocks, which is associated with Bigfoot as well. And also had a tape way back in the 90s in that area that a man lived in near that lake. And he had recorded something that he said was Bigfoot on his property. And every night they would start making these sounds, and he'd recorded it and gave me the tape of Bigfoot. And then also just beyond there's a light phenomenon, UFO one night that a woman saw. Bunch of people saw it. They called the news station. They came out, didn't really find out what it was, but it was definitely a UFO craft of some sort. Then a short distance from there, a woman's walking at 4:30 in the afternoon. She sees a friend that passes her by, and they turn immediately to the right at an intersection. There again, we're talking way out in the country here, not many houses. And she turns around, and as she does, 4:30 in the afternoon, she sees this automobile-size craft, silver, very shiny, and it's not making any noise, and it's going very slowly across that intersection. She tries to get the attention of the woman walking with her, but by the time the woman turned around, this craft had gone behind a tree line. Now, so she was the only witness to see it, but she called another neighbor that would have been in eyesight of that intersection. And they said, no, they weren't home at 4:30 in the afternoon that day. But later that night, they remembered, there again, this is way out in the country, this is pasture country. Behind their house, it would have been about 4 miles over there to another property. But behind their house, out on the ground in their pasture, they saw a white light was on the ground. That was the same night after she saw this craft at 4:30 in the afternoon. Just up the road from that, a guy was going to work one morning. It was about, it was like early, really early, like 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. He goes out, he gets in his truck, he's looking to the east, in the eastern sky. He sees a light that's not there normally. It's some kind of a light. He didn't know what it was. He pulls to his left out on the road. Immediately there's a curve in the road. He turns on that curve, and suddenly everything is illuminated. There's something just shining light everywhere. It's like daylight almost, he said. He stops his vehicle. He turns it off. He rolls down the window. There's no sound whatsoever. Everything's just lit up. And, and suddenly it just goes off. He gets out of the truck and he looks up. There's no sign that there's anything there. It's, but that was just barely up the road. So all of those incidences happened within less than a quarter of a mile of one another. There are other UFO craft that's happened in that same vicinity, where two women were driving to work one morning, and they see a craft just going slowly over the road that they're on, and they watch it, and it just lands in a field over there. They go report it to the sheriff's office. Everything's investigated there, but it's done. No one knows what that was. That's just really close to where we filmed Byways of Bigfoot, along the river. The river is known for lots and lots of orb activity, lots of unusual light phenomena back there along that river as well. And that's really also close to the Bigfoot that I described earlier that was reported in the 70s on those properties that they didn't know it was Bigfoot. And also along that river, lots of Bigfoot activity and crabs and things. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more light phenomena that's happened, disembodied voices in that area, ghost activity. There's a Freemasons building that's haunted. There's ghost activity seen there. And another property in the area where this guy every night would see a craft land, a light on the ground, and a craft landed, very bright silver color, back in his pasture for a couple of weeks. Every night it would land back there. So it just goes on and on and on. And it's just all kinds of things happening in this 10-mile radius.
Wow. So do you think they're all connected some way, the orbs of Bigfoot or cryptids and paranormal and UFOs, or is that area special? Is there something going on, whether it's ley lines, energy, or something supernatural in the area? Or do you just think they're all connected?
It's weird because, if you study like the Skinwalker Ranch and Colorado Ranch and the Meadow and Marley Woods, and then, this 10-mile radius that I'm talking about, just knowing these cases in my 10-mile radius, normally I don't think most people would know about those cases because nobody reported them. These came out from other sources. You know, a lot of people knew people that knew people that knew people that got me to these people asking. They didn't tell their story. The guy who saw the light shine down on his vehicle early in the morning. It was 5 years before he ever told anyone that story. So I think a lot of areas probably have this much phenomena going on. Just nobody's talking about it. They don't know who to talk to. They're not listening to shows like this. You know, they're not even wanting to remember these things that happened to them possibly. But then again, you know, there's things like Molly Woods where, you know, people are actually getting hurt because there's so much activity going on there. No one that I know of was hurt in this 10-mile radius. There was just an observation of unusual phenomena, craft and things like that happening. So I don't know, to answer your question, I just really don't know if it's a location or if, you know, if there's something else involved in this.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's been going on for a long time, obviously, in that 10-mile radius you're talking about. So it makes me wonder, okay, is there like ley lines or something spiritual going on? Because we all know Native Americans, you know, had special areas, whether it was for ceremonies or sacred or burial grounds, that they seem those high. So I'm just wondering if there's something with that 10-mile radius that designates that as special also, and they're just attracted to it, or I don't know.
Yeah, and one of these properties, they have burial mounds on the property itself, and on that property, a man and his son both witnessed UFO crafts going over, several of them going over the property. And then another night, the young man, I think he was a teenager by then, they were out watching some phenomena that was natural phenomena that was going on in the sky. And the rest of them went inside and he just stayed out for a while. And he said, you know, he was just looking up at the sky, just, you know, enjoying it. And all of a sudden it was like the mothership, you know, was like present, and it just really startled him. He didn't tell anyone for a lot of years about that because he didn't know if anyone would believe him or not. But that's in that same 10-mile radius. And that is an area I know of that has the Indian mounds.
Oh, wow.
The burial mounds.
Yeah, it just makes you wonder, you know, because Native Americans always talk about their forefathers and sky beings, you know, and how the spirits that guide them and stuff. So I don't know if they put that energy into the land or if it's just a natural spot, like I said, like ley lines or energy just naturally comes from there, which attracts the Native Americans and UFOs and all that just to come there. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And it's really interesting because we think that those places like Skinwalker Ranch are real isolated or something. But the more that you start researching, I think there are probably different areas, and it could be ley lines that might contribute to that. But there are definitely other areas across the country that certainly have a lot of things happening at the same time.
Can you imagine how many hills are not really hills, that they're actually burial mounds and we have no idea?
Yeah, that's a good
point. It could be all over the place, and that could be part of, you know, some of the activity, you know, in that area.
Yeah.
You know, they just accidentally discovered, like, oh, there's bones. Here's a mound. Well, how do we know that some of these are burial mounds? And we do not know. They just think we're hills.
Right.
Right. And like we've talked about before, you know, the original indigenous people that were here before us, you know, we were all brought here one way or another. You know, how do we know what is sacred and ground and what isn't? I mean, there were so many tribes and so many communities, and whether it's Cahokia mounds or Native American tribes and villages that have made these areas sacred. I mean, we're trespassing and all this stuff, and maybe this weird stuff's all happening from those experiences or other experiences that happen that we don't know about.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we're just clueless on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we've just begun, you know, scratching the surface of what may really be happening. Not only the incidences and the encounters and things that people have, but then, you know, what's behind that, you know, what might actually be causing it.
Right. You just get
Right.
more questions, and then you come up with more questions.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just
True.
like the Civil War, the Civil War ghosts and paranormal stuff that goes on, they say because of the trauma, the great energy that was put into that area, that the ghost keeps coming back and keep doing like they're in the Civil War or whatever they were doing at the time.
Right.
Well, we don't know, like the farm right outside of our house or our property, what happened there. Maybe there was a skirmish. Maybe there was an Indian village. Maybe
Right.
maybe Vikings were there at one time. I mean, we don't know the history, and it's I don't know if we'd ever know or how we'll ever find out, other than people telling us what they see or experience. And
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's very difficult to get a lot of answers. A lot of people remote view things and try to, to get some answers that way. But, it's difficult to know if your remote viewing session is accurate then. So, but, sometimes there's clues. Sometimes there are ways that you can at least do a little bit further research to maybe see what's what.
so you said that you did remote viewing, and this new book coming out is going to talk about people's futures and what they see or what you can help them see, right?
Yeah, the book is called, and the program is called Superpowered Insight. And it just kind of came to me one day that, I had all my life, I've had a lot of things that come to me in the future. And a lot of them had to do with business, and because I did a lot of business things, but sometimes they were personal things. A few times there were warnings about things, like when I'm a real estate investor, and my husband and I had a significant amount of property at that time. And all of a sudden, in about 2003 or 4, I remember this insight. It's like, you need to sell all of your houses. And it's like, good Lord, why would we sell all of our houses? But I knew when something came in that significantly, that was important. And in 2007, of course, there was the crash, of all the values of properties.
Right.
By that time, I was divorced. I got a divorce in 2005. So I own no property whatsoever in 2007 when that happened. But that was one of the insights, that came in. I didn't understand why it was what came in, but it's like, do this because it's important. Another insight that I had, and this one was very personal, but it was 2011, and I had a dream about a house, and this house was going, I didn't know this was the house that was going to auction, but I had a dream about a house, and I could see the floor plan, and I was questioning where I would place things in the rooms, and I could see the rooms. And so a few days after that, there was an auction that, was an estate auction. So there were a lot of personal items that were being auctioned off, as well as the house. I had no intentions of buying this house. None at all. But I ended up there. And because I've been in real estate for so long, I knew the value of it. And it ended up, I bought the house for a really reasonable price. And I kind of did some remodel on it, or not really remodel, but updating of the house. And I wasn't going to keep it. I was just going to sell it and continue living in the house that I live in. But as it turned out, I ended up moving there. And within a few months, my mother had a stroke. She had to come live with me. And if I had not been living in the house that I was living in, her wheelchair would not have fit in the bathrooms. I wouldn't have had room to put a bed in for her in my room because she needed 24/7, observation. Right. So that was one of those things that, I was shown in advance, this house, and go buy, do this. And it was very, very, very good, and numerous other things in my life. So I decided to put together a program. I don't know why it took me this long. I've taught intuitive arts and skills for a long, long time. A lot of it was about, physical health, but also just about life in general. But finally, I decided, this has been such a guiding force in my life and has helped me through so many things. And, to be able to see it in advance is such an advantage, because you make different choices when you can see life in advance. So I decided to put together a class and a book that help people to know how to get to that state where you can see the future as easily as you can see the past. So I'm teaching it in a manner that, time isn't linear as much as we believe it is. It doesn't just stop here in the present. You can we're being fed from the future and the past both. And the future has as big of impact and cause and effect in our lives as the past does. We just don't see it that way. We don't perceive it that way, but we can perceive it that way.
Right.
So it's a challenging project I have going here, but anyone who's interested in it, it can be just really a valuable tool in moving your life forward in positive ways.
So if anybody wants to contact you and join your class or get information, do they contact you through email or a website? Do you have a website?
Sure. I'm working on getting that Superpowered Insight website up now. It's not up yet. I'm going to launch this program probably as a class after the first of the year. But yeah, they can get in touch with me. I'd be happy to put them on an email list of all of the events and things that we're going to be doing on this. And that's just Linda Eastburn, EASTBURN, Linda Eastburn @gmail.com. They can also get to me through Facebook. I have a Facebook called Bigfoot Cryptids Midwest. And so you can get to me through there. I'm all over the place. Linda Eastburn YouTube channel to watch all the videos I put out. So yeah, I'm an easy person to get to. If you put in Linda Eastburn, there's a few other Linda Eastburns, but I'm the only one in Springfield, Missouri.
Okay, nice. Well, Jane's back. Our dog was acting up, so she went to take care of the dog.
She's barking for no reason. She's just up there going bark, bark. I thought I'd go up and check and told her to be quiet.
Yeah, exactly.
And when it comes through the mic, it's time to go upstairs.
While you were gone, Linda was explaining her classes that she was going to have and helping people see what direction their future is going to be and try to help out. And so I didn't know if you had any questions or anything for her.
No, I'm kind of lost now because I
got
got corrected by the dog.
I'm sorry. Well, Linda, this has been fun. This is great.
Yes.
We'd love to have you back if you'd like to come back some other time. And
yeah,
maybe we can get into some other stuff. Maybe we can start talking about your remote viewing.
Yeah.
Even.
I've got a history of that's even deeper than UFO and Bigfoot. That's for sure.
Oh,
Nice.
I would like to do a remote viewing show. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did tons of stuff that I've seen, and including the moon and some weird verification that came in on that one. That was interesting.
Wow, that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Well, I think we'll just go ahead and say goodbye to everybody in chat. You don't have to leave right now if you don't want to. It's up to you, but you can stick around just for a little bit if you'd like. And thank you, everybody in chat, for popping in and checking us out. We had a good crowd today, and we have a lot of our normal people showing up in chat, our good friends, and a couple new people. I want to say hi to Steven that said he was a new subscriber. Thanks for coming in.
Awesome. Yeah,
we had great questions come from the chat. They were pretty awesome today, like they always are from this crowd that we get. And Linda, you said your YouTube was what? What was your channel?
It's just Linda Eastburn YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so anybody that's watching this in the future or in chat now, make sure you go over and check out Linda's YouTube channel and check out her shows and stuff that she's doing. And make sure you email her if you want to get a hold of her for some look into your future to see what may be in line for you or how she can help you adjust or look into the future. I guess it would be remote viewing.
I'm teaching them to be able to do it for themselves, and I'm always happy to do it for them. But it's always good if you can get to that place, and a lot like we were talking about going into portals or being able to get to a place where you don't know exactly where you are. I think a lot of this is happening in some of these inner levels. There are worlds out there we don't know about, but they're hanging around out there, and I think a lot of these Bigfoot and aliens and craft and all of that stuff is in a dimension just beyond this. And if you can go there and see that, check it out. It's kind of an interesting process to do that too.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. All right. Well, having said that, we've had a great time with you, Linda. Thank you for coming on our show. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoyed it a lot. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, we'll just say we love you, chat. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to go to Linda's channel or get a hold of her if you want to take her classes. And we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Keep your vibrations high.
Keep looking up.